timekeeper?
Diana.
Okay, no, don't start yet, Diana. Just want to say my name is Jim Huxtable, and this is my speech number 9, and it is Pursuade with Power is the motif. I'm with Oracle Direct Hardware and Sales Consultant. I've been here for about a year. All right, everybody. You can start the timer. What happened to my favorite magazine, Rolling Stone magazine? Justin Bieber is big, right? But come on, where have we been to arrive at this point that this is our new hero, Justin Bieber? And I was looking inside of the magazine, and actually there's an article about a band that I'm familiar with from my past. Who here knows the name of the band that is the only band that matters? What's the name?
The Clash.
Thank you very much. The Clash. So you got Justin Bieber on the front, but if you open it up, you see a picture of a band in February 1979 at the top of their game. The Clash from England. An incredible band, and what I think is an incredible rock and roll picture. The Clash's double album, London Calling, was released in December 1979. Yet, when Rolling Stone did their best albums of the 1980s, it was #1. Now, this bold music that bridged the years between the 1970s and 1980s with ska, reggae, punk influence, social, political overtones that couldn't be ignored. Here is this album released in 1979, yet it expanded the 1980s as the best album. What was it about 1979 that made it the best year in music? My name is Jim Huxtable. This is my speech number 9. 1979, my favorite year in music. So I'm going to break it up into 3 parts. The first is Forces of Change in 1979, the albums of 1979, and the singles of 1979. I don't think we would have music today the way it is if it wasn't for what was happening in 1979. At the beginning of the year, you saw the same singles from the same bands. The Bee Gees hit #1. Donna Summer hit #1. But there were forces of change occurring in 1979, specifically the infusion of punk and new wave music, causing a disturbance in the disco realm, the ballad realm. And what you also saw was during the summertime, they had an anti-disco rally in between a doubleheader at Wrigley Field. That anti-disco rally shut down that second game. It was so crazy. And I was really glad about that because 2 years earlier I had been forced to do disco dancing in my PE class. So forces of change were happening, but let's take a look at some of the albums of 1979. I have some from my collection. Joe Jackson, I'm the Man. This was released in the summer of 1979 and actually was the second album released by Joe Jackson. He released his debut album, Look Sharp, in January of that year. In January as well, Elvis Costello released his best album, Armed Forces. And Graham Parker and The Rumor released their critically acclaimed album, Squeezing Out Sparks. 1979 was in fact the year of the Angry Young Man. But the Angry Young Men had turned their rage into melody and message. When you talk about the 3 albums that I consider to be really the most important from 1979, I need to begin no further than the masterpiece, The Wall by Pink Floyd. Until 1999, this has sold 23 million copies and was the hugest album basically up to that point, aside from Sgt. Pepper. And it told the story of the alienation between the performer on stage and the audience in front of them. A very compelling story. The second album is Breakfast in America by Supertramp. During that year, the harmonica intro to Take the Long Way Home was blaring out of car stereos everywhere. And the third album, Regatta de Blanc by The Police. Their mega hit, Message in a Bottle, showed that they weren't just a band that recorded Roxanne, although Roxanne was still on the charts in 1979. Other notable albums in 1979 include Cheap Trick's seminal live album, Live at Budokan, and their album Dream Police, both released that same year. The Who had lost Keith Moon in 1978, but in 1979 they released 2 soundtracks, Quadrophenia and The Kids Are All Right, and 2 films. Recharting on the charts were 515 and Long Live Rock. The Talking Heads released their third album, Fear of Music, where they took their new wave quirkiness and infused African rhythms for a completely different sound. There were also some notable debuts in 1979. Gang of Four brought us Entertainment, Stiff Little Fingers, Madness, The Specials. How did this get in here? And Joy Division. As well, the B-52s also brought out their debut album. I brought this with me. It was actually autographed by the B-52s in 1979 at a record shop in Santa Cruz, and I'll pass it around. Let's talk a little bit about the singles of 1979. As I had stated, in the beginning of 1979, the #1 hits were from Donna Summer and the Bee Gees. During the summertime, there was a huge shift in the music industry with the release of My Sharona by the Knack. It stayed at #1 for 6 weeks. And it was the first song in 2 years that was not either a ballad or a disco song to reach #1. And their album actually was kind of a takeoff on Meet the Beatles, with their faces and how they were all standing and so forth, but they didn't have the staying power. Neither did the Village People, but really, maybe YMCA was the biggest song of 1979, maybe with I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor coming in a little bit second. Blondie released Heart of Glass, which was both punk and both new wave and disco. And Michael Jackson released Can't Stop Till You Get Enough, and he came of age. In addition, 2 additional songs come to mind. The Devil Went Down to Georgia and Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing. I mention these at the same time because they both had the most incredible mid-song soloing, classics. In addition, Rapper's Delight was released by the Sugar Hill Gang and basically began the hip-hop and rap that we just can't live without today. There were some notable misfires during the year. Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin' by Journey, Do You Think I'm Sexy by Rod Stewart, and who could forget Escape, the Pina Colada song. And lastly, the Buggles released the song Video Killed the Radio Star, which would eventually become MTV's first video. Groundbreaking indeed. So, what I've shown you is a little bit about 1979 and why I believe it's the most important. I think that they set a lot of trends that we're experiencing today in music, and I challenge you to do your own speech on the year that you think was better. I'd be more than happy to listen to it. Thank you very much.